The screens in the Earth Defense Station showed the same image that had terrified every human being for the past 72 hours. 200 warships hung in the black space above Earth, each one larger than a city. They did not move. They did not need to move. Their presence alone was enough to crush the hopes of humanity. Commander Burke sat in the command center, watching those ships with eyes that had not closed in 2 days. His uniform was wrinkled. His face was covered in stubble. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Around him, military officers moved with the kind of quiet desperation that came from knowing they were about to lose everything. They had made first contact 3 weeks ago. The message they sent was simple: surrender or die. They did not ask for negotiation. They did not ask for terms. They simply stated facts the way a human might tell a child that water is wet. The aliens had conquered 12 civilizations before Earth. 12. Each one thought they were strong. Each one thought they could survive. All 12 were gone now, either enslaved or destroyed, depending on how much trouble they had caused during the conquest. Second in command, Major Grant, stood beside him. She was younger than by 20 years, but her face looked older now. Exhaustion had carved deep lines around her eyes. She held a tablet with the latest scans of the fleet. "The ambassador wants to meet again," said quietly. "They say it is time for Earth to accept reality." Did not take his eyes off the screens. "How long?" 1 hour, the United Nations building. Every world leader will be there. Finally turned to look at her. "Will it matter what we say?" Did not answer. They both knew the truth. Nothing Earth said would matter. They had already decided. They were just going through the motions to be civil. The meeting room in the United Nations building was crowded with fear. Presidents and prime ministers sat around a long table, and they all looked the same, scared. The military leaders stood behind them, including. Ambassador entered the room first. He was not human, and that was something that took getting used to. His body was thin and tall, with skin that seemed to shimmer between and silver. His eyes were large and black, without pupils or irises. When he moved with a kind of fluid grace that made humans uncomfortable because it was too alien, too other. With came 3 guards. They carried weapons that humans did not understand, and their presence in the room was a reminder of the power imbalance. Did not sit down. He looked at the human leaders the way a human might look at insects under glass. "You have had time to think about what we have asked," said. His voice was soft and calm, which somehow made it worse. "The time for thinking is over. We will accept your surrender now." The President of the United States tried to speak. "We would like to propose." Raised one long, thin hand. The President stopped talking immediately. "There is nothing to propose," said. "We have studied your species, we have studied your weapons, we have studied your military capabilities. You are children playing with toys. Your space fleet has 50 ships. We have 200. Your weapons have the power to destroy cities. Our weapons have the power to destroy planets." He paused, and in that pause was absolute certainty. "We do not wish to destroy your world," continued. "The resources are valuable, your people can be useful, but we will not tolerate resistance. If even one of your ships fires on us, we will destroy your entire civilization in 3 weeks. Every human being will die, every building will fall. Your world will become a dead rock in the void." Stepped forward. He had not planned to speak. He simply could not stand still while this creature delivered a sentence of death to all of humanity. "We would like to discuss terms of coexistence," said. His voice was steady. That surprised him. Turned his black eyes on, and felt the weight of them like a physical force. "You are a soldier," said. It was not a question. "I am," said. "Then you understand hierarchy. You understand that the strong command and the weak obey. This is natural law. This is how the universe works. You are weak. We are strong. There is nothing to discuss. We have not come this far as a species by accepting that what seems impossible is always impossible," said. "We have survived extinction events. We have built civilizations on worlds that should have destroyed us. We have done things that every expert said could not be done." Made a sound like laughter, but it had no humor in it. "Your species survived because we did not arrive earlier," said. "Now we are here. Your time of survival is over. I give you 6 hours to make a choice. Surrender completely or face annihilation. Give me your answer." He turned and walked from the room. The guards followed him. In seconds, the room was empty but it felt more crowded than before. The human leaders erupted into chaos. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to try to fight. All of them knew they had no good options. Walked away from the arguing. He returned to the defense station and found in the tactical room looking at scans of the fleet. Lieutenant Hayes was with her. Was a pilot, one of the best Earth had. He was the kind of person who thought differently, who saw solutions where others saw walls. "How bad is it?" asked. Looked at him with burning eyes. "It is impossible. Their shields would take years to pierce with everything we have. Their weapons are too advanced. Their tactics are perfect. We cannot win." "Cannot or will not?" asked. "Same thing when the odds are this bad," said. Sat down heavily in a chair. For the first time, he felt the weight of command crushed down on him. Millions of people were waiting for him to find a way to save them. There was no way. There could not be a way. But then he looked at the scans again, and were brilliant, but they were looking at the problem the same way they wanted them to look at it. They were comparing their strength to the strength. They were looking for answers in the place where answers could not exist. "Show me the shield readings," said. Pulled up the data. The shields were stable and strong, but as watched, he noticed something. The power signature was not constant, it pulsed. Every 12 seconds there was a tiny fluctuation. "What is that?" he asked, pointing. Leaned forward. "Shield harmonic sync. All their ships pulse at the same frequency, probably for communication and coordination." "How long does the dip last?" asked. Measured it carefully. Maybe 1/10 of a second. Why? Did not answer. He was thinking about what he had said to the ambassador, about how humans survived because they tried what seemed impossible. "How many ships do we have that can still fly?" asked. 50, said. "Why?" "What if we did not try to win? What if we tried something else?" Both and stared at him. The war room was split between hope and despair. On one side of the table sat the generals who had already accepted that Earth would fall. They spoke in voices filled with resignation, discussing evacuation plans and how to preserve human knowledge for whatever came next. On the other side sat, and the small team that had been pulled from their duties in the middle of the night. Doctor sat at the head of side. She was a weapons engineer, one of the people in the world, and she had the kind of face that showed everything she was thinking. Right now, she was thinking that was proposing something crazy. "You want me to build a timing system that coordinates strikes with a 1/10 of a second window," said. It was not a question. "Yes," said. "Across multiple ships," continued. "Yes," said again. "Moving through an enemy formation in a pattern that has never been attempted before," said. "Yes," said. Looked at the data on the screens, the shields, the harmonic sync, the tiny gap where reality bent in humanity's favor. "It is not possible," said, but then she leaned forward and studied the numbers more carefully. "It is not possible with current systems, but if I modified the targeting computers, stripped out the safety protocols, added in predictive algorithms based on flying data, and rewrote half the weapon's code, it might be possible, barely, if everything goes perfectly, which it will not." "How long to build it?" asked. "Normally, 3 months, maybe 4. "How long if we ignore every safety regulation and work non-stop?" Looked at him with tired eyes. 36 hours, but the systems will be unstable. They might fail at any moment." "They will fail if we do nothing," said. "At least this gives us a chance." The generals on the other side of the table were shaking their heads. General, who led the Earth Defense Forces, stood up. "This is fantasy," said. "You are asking people to die for a plan that has almost no chance of working. We need to surrender now while we still have time to negotiate protection for the civilian population." "If we surrender now, there will be no negotiation," said. "They will take what they want and leave us as slaves, or they will decide we are too much trouble and destroy us anyway. We have nothing to negotiate with except our willingness to fight." "You will throw away 3,000 soldiers," said. "Yes," said, "and if we do nothing, we throw away 8 billion people." The room went silent. Everyone understood the math. It was who spoke next. "I will do it. Put me in the fastest ship. I will fly the pattern." Immediately stood up. "You need a strike commander. That is me." "You need someone to coordinate the weapon's fire," said. "I will set up the systems, but you need someone who understands them. I am going with you." One by one, others volunteered. Christopher Moore, a weapons specialist who had lost family in the Mars colony attacks. Lisa, a veteran pilot who had been flying combat missions since before was born. 30 other soldiers who had already lost everything and decided they might as well fight. Looked at the generals on the other side of the table. I will need authorization to move forward with this plan. General stared at him for a long time. Then slowly he sat back down. You have it. But if this fails, I will ensure your name is remembered as the man who threw away Earth's last hope. Fair enough, said. The next 36 hours were the most intense hours of life, and her team worked in the depths of the defense station's computer systems, rewriting code that had taken years to perfect. Their hands shook with exhaustion. They drank coffee until their hearts raced. One of his assistants simply fell asleep at the keyboard and did not wake for 8 hours. Flew simulation after simulation in the training program. The pattern he had to fly was unlike anything a pilot had ever attempted. It required moving through gaps between enemy ships, timing acceleration and deceleration to precise fractions of a second, and never, ever falling out of the exact pattern. Trained the strike team. She made them practice until their muscles remembered the sequence, until their hands could execute the maneuver in their sleep. She was merciless with them because the margin for error was 0. Christopher Moore spent hours in the gym, pushing his body to the limit. He did not talk much. Everyone knew why he was here. Everyone knew he was fighting for the people who had died on Mars. Lisa watched all of this, and something inside her that had been dying slowly over decades began to wake up. She had accepted that humans were not meant for the stars, that they were too weak, too fragile, too small. But looking at these people working with impossible desperation, she saw something different. She saw the thing that had made humanity survive. On the morning of the assault, came to with a tablet showing the finalized systems. It will work, she said. Or it will not work. I cannot make it more reliable than this. The systems are as good as I can make them. The rest depends on and the pilots. The rest depends on luck and courage. Nodded, that is all it ever depends on. An hour before the strike was supposed to begin, visited each ship. He talked to the pilots and the soldiers. He did not try to comfort them. He simply spoke the truth. We are going to do something that should be impossible, he said to each group. We are probably going to fail, and if we do, we will die, but we will die fighting. We will die refusing to accept that humans are meant to be slaves or fossils. We will die the way humans have always died when they choose to stand against the darkness, with our eyes open, with our heads up, with the knowledge that we tried. Sat in the cockpit of the fastest ship Earth had ever built. His hands rested on the controls. Through the viewport, he could see the massive shapes of the fleet waiting in the darkness. His voice came through his helmet speakers. All ships are ready. Pattern recognition systems are active. Weapons coordinators are standing by. Then let us do the impossible, said. The training facility was buried 2 miles beneath the surface of the Earth, in a mountain range far from any city. It was designed to survive anything short of a direct asteroid impact. Right now, it served as the last place on Earth where hope could exist. Grant stood in the center of the simulation chamber. Around her, 6 holographic displays showed the exact positions of the fleet. The pattern had designed hung in the air like a piece of invisible thread, waiting to be followed. The pilots entered one by one. Lisa came in first, her jaw tight. Then came a younger pilot from Canada. Then Sarah Johnson, who had been flying combat missions since she was 23. Then 2 more pilots whose names knew by heart because she had spent the last day studying their service records. The maneuver is impossible, said without preamble. She did not believe in wasting time on false confidence. All of you will probably die. If anyone wants to leave now, I will not think less of you. Nobody left. Good, said. Then let us practice doing something impossible. For the next 24 hours, they flew the pattern. Again and again and again. The simulation was programmed to match the exact capabilities of the fleet. As the pilots moved through the gaps between simulated enemy ships, the defense systems tracked them, targeted them, attempted to destroy them. In the first dozen runs, all 6 pilots died before they could complete half the pattern. In the next dozen runs, they made it further but still failed, started to shake in his seat from the stress. Sarah Johnson's hands became so tense that had to force her to take a break. This is not working, Lisa said after 40 simulations. She was sitting in the break room, staring at the wall. We cannot do this. They are too good. Their tracking systems are too fast. We are making mistakes because we are human and human beings make mistakes. We make mistakes, but we also adapt, said. She sat down beside the older pilot. They have probably never encountered a strategy like this before. Their systems are perfect at defending against things they understand. We are going to show them something they do not understand. Humans flying like suicidal machines? Lisa asked. Yes, said, that is exactly what we are going to show them. They returned to the simulations. Lisa led the way this time, flying more aggressively, pushing the limits of what the ship could do. The other pilots followed her line. They trusted her because she was the one with the most experience, because she had survived things that should have killed her. By the 50th simulation, they were completing 60% of the pattern. By the 70th, they were reaching the core of the formation. By the 100th simulation, 5 of the 6 pilots were making it all the way through. The one who did not make it was always Sarah Johnson. She was brilliant, but she was fighting against something deeper than skill. She was fighting against fear. Not fear of dying, but fear of failing, of not being good enough, of letting down the people counting on her. On the 110th simulation, she made it all the way through. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. Her maneuvers were perfect. When the simulation ended, she simply sat in the cockpit and began to cry. Walked over and opened the cockpit. She said nothing. Sometimes there was nothing to say. Doctor was in a different part of the facility, working on the weapons coordination systems with her team. The problem was not building the system. The problem was making sure that 6 different ships, separated by thousands of meters, could fire their weapons within 1/10 of a second of each other. In space, even 1/10 of a second meant the difference between hitting the target and missing it. And if they missed, they would have just enough time to react, to move their shields back into perfect position, to destroy the human strike force before it could do any real damage. His assistant, a young man named David Cole, figured out the solution at 3 in the morning. He was not sleeping well these days. None of them were. We use quantum entanglement, David said, showing his work on a tablet. We are not trying to synchronize the ships. We are creating a unified system where all 6 weapons act as one entity. The firing command reaches all ships at exactly the same moment in time. Read through the equations. They were brilliant. They were also insane. This will violate every principle of causality we understand, said. Probably, David agreed, but it will work. If it does not work, it will create an explosion that might destroy the ships before they even shoot at them, said. Yes, David said, that is the risk. Stared at the equations for a long moment. Then she started typing, adding her own modifications to the system. By the time the sun rose over the mountain, they had a working prototype. By midday, they had tested it 20 times. It worked 19 times. The 20th time, the system overloaded and the test equipment exploded. Nobody was hurt, but the message was clear. This system was as unstable as fire. Visited in the lab, she was covered in soot from the explosion. She had bandages on both hands where flying debris had cut her. She looked like she had been to war and back. How long until the weapon systems are ready? Asked. They are ready now, said. They will probably kill you, but they are ready. Good, said. Christopher Moore spent his time in a different way. He went to the memorial for the people who had died on Mars. Nearly 2,000 names were carved into the wall. He knew the names of at least 100 of them. People he had worked with, people he had eaten dinner with, people who should have lived longer. He placed his hand on one name, Michael Park, a mining engineer with a wife and 2 children back on Earth. I am going to kill them, Christopher said to the wall. I cannot bring you back, I cannot fix what they did, but I am going to kill them. Lisa found him standing there. Revenge is not a good reason to die, Lisa said. Then what is? Christopher asked. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. The knowledge that if you do not try, your people will be destroyed, that sometimes courage is the only weapon that matters. The night before the assault, could not sleep. She walked through the facility and found sitting in the command center, watching live feeds from the fleet. Are you scared? She asked. Yes, said. There was no point in lying to her. What happens if we fail? Asked. Then everyone on that strike force dies and they destroy Earth, said. And I will know that I sent those people to their deaths for a plan that did not work. That is a lot of weight, said. It is the weight of command, said. It is the weight that falls on every person who sends others into danger. But you know what I realized? They think that weight breaks us. They think that uncertainty and fear make us weak. But humans have learned to carry that weight and still move forward. That is our real strength. Sat down beside him. My team will do it. Whatever you asked us to do, we will try to do it. That is all I can ask, said. His hands were steady as the ship accelerated. The throttle moved forward with smooth certainty. Around him, the displays showed the formation growing larger with each passing second. Behind him, 5 other human ships followed his line. They moved in the exact formation that had been practiced 100 times. They were flying into the teeth of the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, and they did it with the kind of focus that could only come from complete certainty in what needed to be done. The commanders had already begun to laugh. In the tactical rooms of the alien flagship, officers watched the human ships approach and made bets about how long it would take to destroy them. Some said 30 seconds, others said less. One commander, an officer named H, was not laughing. H had served in 40 battles across 3 star systems. H understood that the most dangerous opponent was not the one with the best weapons. It was the one who was willing to do something unexpected. Track all 6 human ships, H ordered. Do not assume they will attack in standard formation. But even as he gave the order, the human ships were already doing something that tactics had never encountered. They were moving in a spiral pattern that seemed to have no logic to it. They were not coming straight at the enemy. They were coming at angles, from different directions, spiraling inward toward the heart of the fleet. The defense systems tried to track them, but the pattern was wrong. The algorithms that controlled the weapons were designed to predict human behavior based on human logic. The spiral had no logic. It was a dance, and they did not know the steps. Fire on all human ships, the commander ordered. The weapons opened up. Green energy bolts filled the space around the human ships. The light was so bright that it hurt to look at it. The heat was so intense that it should have vaporized anything biological. The human ships did not vaporize, they moved. His hands flew across the controls, not consciously deciding what to do, but moving with the muscle memory of 100 training sessions. The ship twisted and banked and accelerated in patterns that seemed to follow the gaps between the warships. It was like threading a needle while someone was trying to smash you with a hammer. "Stay on my line," said calmly to the other pilots. His voice was the only steady thing in the universe right now. Ship moved with him, then Sarah Johnson's. Then Lisa brought her damaged ship around in a maneuver that should have torn it apart but did not. 2 of the human ships were destroyed in the first 10 seconds. Christopher Moore watched his friend die when a weapon caught the ship and turned it into an expanding cloud of metal and fire. The death was so complete, so absolute, that there was nothing left to even call a body. Christopher did not have time to process grief. He had time only to keep flying, to keep moving, to keep following his line deeper into the heart of the formation. Monitored everything from the flagship. She watched the ships move. She watched the weapons fire. She watched her people die. And she held her hand steady over the weapons targeting system. "Weapons, stand ready," she said into the communications system. "You will fire when the system tells you to fire, not before, not after, the exact moment the system signals." Working from the station below the Earth's surface, watch the quantum entanglement system activate. It was the strangest feeling she had ever experienced, creating a connection between 6 ships separated by thousands of meters, binding them together into one unified consciousness. The system showed the shields, the harmonic pulse, the tiny gaps where reality bent in humanity's favor. The gaps came every 12 seconds. The gaps lasted 1/10 of a second. But there were 6 gaps coming at almost the same time across 6 different ships. Counting down to firing window said 10 seconds. Ship was now in the absolute heart of the formation. Ships surrounded him on all sides. Their weapons were firing at point-blank range. The shields on his vessel were overloading. His systems were failing one by one. 5 seconds, his voice said in his ear. Felt his ship begin to tear apart. Metal was screaming. Warning lights were flashing. He could taste blood in his mouth. 3 seconds. If the system failed now, if the quantum entanglement collapsed, all 6 ships would die and nothing would have been accomplished. They would repair whatever damage had been done, and then they would destroy Earth. 1 second. Christopher Moore was aiming his weapons at a frigate. His targeting computer was already destroyed, so he was aiming manually, using the backup systems that had not been updated since the previous century. It seemed impossible that he would hit anything. "Now," said The 6 human ships fired at exactly the same moment. The weapons were not special weapons. They were just standard human missiles and energy bolts. But they hit at the moment when the shields dipped. They hit when the shields were weakest. They hit with the precision that only comes when 6 different weapons act as one. A flagship lost its shields. The ship's systems overloaded from the impact. Fires erupted across its hull. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to be a military vessel. It became a ball of burning metal drifting through the darkness. A second ship lost power. A third was crippled. A fourth began to sink deeper into space, pulled by the gravity of a nearby star. The fleet went silent. For the first time in 100 years, they had lost ships in combat. Ships had died while they were trying to preserve their crews. Ships had been destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as inferior. And then they did something that shocked everyone who was watching. They broke formation. The alien ships began to move independently, breaking apart the rigid structure that had made them so powerful. The tactics that worked for an organized fleet did not work for scattered ships. The advantage that the humans had gained by striking at unified shield harmonics disappeared as each ship began to manage its own defenses. Christopher Moore saw what was happening. He understood that they were adapting, learning, becoming more dangerous with every second. His ship was on fire. Most of his systems were offline. He had maybe 30 seconds before the vessel failed completely. He could turn and run. His ship would fail, but he could eject before it exploded. He could survive. Or he could do something else. Christopher said into the communication system, "I am changing my heading. I am going to ram the cruiser on your 6. Negative said, "Maintain formation." "There is no formation anymore," Christopher said. "There is only fight, and I choose to fight." Christopher Moore increased the power to his damaged engines. He pushed the ship toward the cruiser. The alien vessel tried to move, but Christopher was already committed. He was aiming not to damage the ship, but to destroy it. The collision happened at 10 kilometers per second. The human ship, small and fragile by comparison, simply ceased to exist. But it took the cruiser with it, destroying a warship that had served the alien fleet for 200 years. Lisa, watching Christopher's sacrifice through the sensors, felt something break inside her chest. Anger and sadness and rage and loss all mixed together into something beyond emotion. It became pure action. She turned her ship and fired at a pursuing destroyer. The shot should not have hit. Her targeting systems were destroyed. But she fired with her last remaining missiles, and somehow, by some miracle or luck or the simple determination to make the aliens pay, the missiles found their target. The destroyer took damage. Not fatal damage, but damage that forced it to change course, forced it to stop pursuing the remaining human ships. Brought his crippled vessel out of the formation. His ship was barely holding together. More than half the crew was dead. The engines were failing, but he had made it through. He had flown the pattern. He had done the impossible. Behind him and 2 other pilots followed him back out of the fleet. The strike was over. Out of 6 ships, 4 had survived. Out of 250 soldiers, fewer than 100 remained alive. But the fleet had lost 5 ships. 5 capital warships destroyed. For the first time in the history of galactic warfare, humans had stood against a superior power and made them bleed. And in the tactical rooms of the flagship, the commanders were no longer laughing. They were confused. They were adapting. But most importantly, they were learning that humans were not the insects they had assumed. H looked at the damage reports. 5 ships lost. Dozens of smaller vessels damaged. It was the most significant military loss his fleet had suffered in over a century. He looked at the human strike force retreating, limping back into the darkness. "Do not pursue," H ordered. "Stand down all weapons. We need to understand what we just witnessed. We need to understand what they are." Behind him, other commanders stared at the damage in silence. The perfect fleet had been broken, and they were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. The memorial wall in the defense station grew longer every day. New names were added as more information came about who had died in the strike. The names covered an entire wall, stretching from floor to ceiling. Each name represented a person who had chosen to fight for humanity's survival. Christopher Moore's name was placed at the center of the wall. Admiral Grant stood in front of the wall, touching the names one by one. She knew most of them. She had trained with them. She had eaten meals with them. She had watched them die. Her uniform now carried 3 stars. She had been promoted not because the military wanted to reward her, but because there was nobody else left alive with more experience. Had been made a captain. Had been made head of the military weapons development program. Lisa had retired to an office where she consulted on tactical matters and tried not to think about the friends she had lost. The fleet was still in orbit above Earth, but something fundamental had changed. There was no longer a countdown to surrender. There was no longer an ultimatum. There was only negotiation. Ambassador requested a meeting. This time, walked into the conference room with his head held high. He was not walking as a defeated commander coming to accept surrender terms. He was walking as a leader of a people who had proven something to the galaxy. Was there, surrounded by his guards, but something was different. The ambassador no longer looked at with contempt. He looked at him with something that might have been respect. "You have caused significant damage to our fleet," said. It was not an accusation. It was simply a statement of fact. "We defended our home," said. "You did more than defend," said. "You have done something that your species should not have been capable of doing. You have struck at a superior force and survived. You have shown us that humans are not what we believed." Said nothing, he simply waited. "The Council has decided to modify its previous terms," continued. "Earth will no longer be conquered. Instead, Earth will be recognized as a sovereign power. We will establish trade agreements. We will establish cultural exchanges. We will treat your people as equals." "What changed?" asked. "Why would you offer terms you would never have offered before?" Was silent for a long moment. "Because we have learned something that we should have known before. There is a difference between intelligence and capability. There is a difference between technology and will. Your species has less technology than we do. Your intelligence is not superior to ours, but your will. Your will is something we do not fully understand. Your people were willing to die against impossible odds, not for resources, not for territory, but for the simple belief that they should not accept defeat." He paused, and his large black eyes focused entirely on. "That is something that cannot be defeated," said. "That is something more powerful than weapons or shields or tactics. That is something we must respect." The fleet began its retreat 3 days later. They did not leave Earth's orbit immediately. They moved slowly, deliberately, allowing enough time for human broadcast networks to show the galaxy that the aliens were leaving. That Earth had survived. That humanity had stood against the darkness and not been consumed. Watched the ships depart from the observation deck of the defense station. His ship was still being repaired. He was still recovering from injuries that had come close to killing him. But he was alive. Lisa joined him at the observation window. They stood in silence for several minutes, watching the massive alien warships disappear into the distance. "Do you think we really won?" Lisa asked. "No," said. "But we did something more important. We proved that we could survive losing. We proved that defeat is not the same as destruction. We proved that humans can take hits and keep moving forward." Lisa nodded. She had spent most of her life believing that humans were small and fragile in a universe that did not care. But watching those ships retreat, she finally understood. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the most advanced. But they had something that they did not expect. Humans had hope. Received a visitor in her laboratory. It was H, the commander who had stopped the pursuit of the human strike force. He came alone, without guards. "I wanted to understand how you created the quantum entanglement system," H said. "It should not have been possible with your level of technology." Showed him the equations. She showed him the designs. She explained the thinking that had gone into creating something that violated every known principle of causality. H studied the work in silence. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. "This is insane," H said. "This is beautiful and insane. You created a weapon based on a principle that your own scientists did not fully understand. You built it anyway because you had no choice." "Yes," said. "That is what your species is," H said. "That is why we were wrong to believe we could defeat you. You do not play by the rules. You do not accept the boundaries of what is possible. You simply do the impossible and ask for forgiveness later." Christopher Moore's funeral was held a week after the strike. The fleet attended, not because they were being forced to, but because H had requested to pay respects to a soldier who had chosen to die rather than surrender. The funeral was held in a valley near the defense station. 200 soldiers stood in uniform. Grant stood at the front, holding Christopher's service medal. The inscription on the medal read simply, "Courage in the face of darkness." placed the medal on the memorial stone that marked Christopher's grave. She did not cry. Tears would come later in private. Right now, she simply stood with her head held high and honored the man who had given everything. H stood at the back of the funeral, watching. He was a creature of logic and tactics and military strategy. He did not fully understand the human need to honor the dead with ceremony, but he was beginning to understand that there was more to strategy than weapons and formations. They brought gifts to Earth. They brought technology that would help repair the damage from the attacks. They brought medical knowledge that would save lives. They brought something else as well, recognition that humans belonged among the stars. Nations of Earth formed a unified government for the first time in history. The United Earth Council took the seat at the Galactic Council that had been offered to humanity. Burke was appointed as the first representative, and he accepted the position with the knowledge that he had changed the course of human history. Continued flying, piloting the new ships that Earth began to build with help. His flying pattern, the spiral that had broken the fleet, became known throughout the galaxy as the Earth Maneuver. It was studied by every military in the known galaxy. It was taught in academies. It was the moment when humans proved they had a place among the stars. Lisa finally believed it. She finally believed that humanity was not weak, that humans were not small, that the weakness she had felt for so long came not from their species but from their lack of confidence in what they could do. Grant climbed through the ranks until she became the commander of the entire Earth Defense Force. She made Christopher Moore's name the first name in the record books of everyone who served under her. She made sure that his sacrifice was never forgotten. Its weapon systems became the foundation of Earth's military technology for generations to come. Her insane genius, her willingness to violate the laws of physics because there was no other choice, became the model for human innovation. And Burke, standing in the council chambers of the Galactic Council, looked at the representatives from 100 different species and spoke words that would be remembered for centuries. My people were told that we were weak. We were told that we should accept defeat. We were told that resistance was futile. But humans have always known something that others do not. We have always known that no enemy, no matter how powerful, can defeat a species that refuses to give up. The fleet came to destroy us. Instead, they taught us who we really are. He paused and looked at each representative in turn. We are the species that does the impossible. We are the species that finds new ways when old ways fail. We are the species that stands against the darkness and says, not today. We were born on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We survived because we would not accept that survival was impossible, and we will not accept it now. We are the human race, and we are here to stay. The Galactic Council rose and applauded. For the first time in recorded history, a newly discovered species was not conquered or enslaved or destroyed. Instead, it was recognized. It was respected. It was given a place at the table. Christopher Moore's name lived on in the hearts of every human being. His sacrifice had purchased not just survival, but dignity. It had purchased the right to stand as equals among the stars. In the memorial room of the defense station, Grant stood before the wall of names one final time. She touched Christopher's name, then's name, then's name. She touched the names of everyone who had fought and died so that humanity could have a future. We did it, she whispered. We did the impossible, just like you knew we could. The memorial glowed in the darkness, a testament to human courage in the face of overwhelming odds. And far above, in the vast emptiness of space, the human presence continued to grow. Not as slaves or conquered subjects, but as a people who had proven themselves worthy of the stars. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human strength had begun. The morning of the assault arrived with a quiet that seemed wrong. The sky was clear. Birds were singing in the mountain valleys. The world seemed too peaceful for war. Gathered the strike team for the last time. They were suited up and ready. They carried weapons and tools and the weight of humanity's last hope. We'll fly the pattern, said. All of you will follow his line exactly. Weapons will fire when the system tells them to fire. Nobody changes anything. Nobody improvises. Nobody gives up. You all understand. They nodded. There was no fear in their eyes now. There was acceptance. There was the strange calm that came when humans stopped fighting against the inevitable and started fighting for something larger than themselves. Then let us make them understand what they are facing, said. Let us show them what happens when you mock the human race. He pushed the throttle forward. Behind him, the strike force moved forward with him, into the darkness, toward the fleet that had mocked them, toward the line between extinction and survival. They saw them coming. In the tactical rooms of the alien fleet, officers looked at the screens with something that might have been amusement. Earth was sending its entire remaining force directly toward the most powerful military fleet in known space. It was not courage, it was suicide, and they prepared to watch it happen. "What do you mean?" asked. "Stood up, get me the fastest pilots in the fleet, get me the best weapons technicians, get me doctor, and do not tell anyone what we are doing until we are sure it can work." For the first time in days, there was something that was not despair in size. There was a small, fragile seed of hope.